so much.
You don't miss me.
I do. I miss you so much. Don't say that.
I miss you too. How are you, my dear?
I'm good. How are you?
You know me. Always moving.
Always good.
Yeah.
So we know each other because we were coworkers at Equinox for what felt like an eternity.
I mean, a
Long
long
I
time.
mean, you're still there. You've been there how long now?
It'll be 8 years. This October, 8 years.
You made it longer than me. I worked there 6 years before going out on my own.
Right.
But yeah, so I had Chris on last week, your bestie. And we were talking about
I've
you.
never referred to each other as besties ever. Never once have I've been like, Chris is my bestie. Never once happened.
Well, I call you besties.
That is the homie. That is, yeah, absolutely.
Love Chris. Yeah, and you came up, and I'm like, oh, I have to have Marvin on, and then I thought, well, why not ask him if he can do it this week?
So. All right, cool. So I was an afterthought after Chris.
No,
Okay.
no,
I got it. No.
I gotta get everything out. I have like a list of people that I want, and then I just go down that list. And so, anyway, I'm so glad that you came on today. Of course, like this whole podcast is about people that inspire me, and you've always inspired me. I know quite a bit about you because we were coworkers for a long time and friends. And I would just like for you to share your story. You're also a comedian like Chris. You're hilarious, and I love going to your shows and seeing like you're doing like Zoom shows now, which I thought was really creative, and you've got a podcast, and so I just want to talk about your story and like how you grew up and where you got to where you are today. I know you're a single dad as well, which I would love to get into, and I feel very old that your kid is 16 now, because I remember when he was just a little guy.
When he was 8, yeah. Yes.
So anyway, I'll turn it over to you, but I would love to know, I know you grew up in New York, right?
No, I'm from Baltimore City, born and raised.
You lived in New York?
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you were from New York. Okay.
Yeah,
then I need to hear your story because I don't know as much as I thought.
Marvin, I know so much about you. So tell me about growing up in New York.
I can say a million things about you, bye.
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's. We'll just edit this part out. It's fine.
Okay.
All right. So I'm originally a Baltimore City, born and raised. We moved a lot around Baltimore City because my mom was literally trying to keep us in the best neighborhoods that Section 8 could find. It's I'm the middle of 7, so there was a lot of us, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of movement. So my mom, did her best, which I'm always thankful for my mom. But we moved a ton, a bunch of different schools, and a lot of that is kind of the beginning of my story. I used to, when we would transfer, always have to make new friends, right? And it was never like we transferred to a place where I knew people. It was always like new place. And so I remember the thought, and I vividly going, people would like me if they just knew how funny I was. Because I thought I was funny. I thought I was hilarious at a young age. And my friends, once I made friends, would always go, "You're so silly, goofy, funny." And so I had to figure out how to make friends every time I moved. And so that's legitimately the birth of my comedy. That and being the middle of 7, and Me?
You had to stick out. Like, you're the middle of 7. You're like,
Please look at me, someone. Ugh.
hey, I'm the oldest of just, there's 2 of us, and I feel like I was the same way. I mean, as the oldest, like, look at me, no, forget about her. I was the only one.
You don't need her.
We don't need her. Like, look at me.
And the thing is, like, as the first one, you get all the attention, and then it's like, well, there's a new one, and you're like, I didn't sign up for this.
In the middle, you're like, wait.
Yeah, like I came in when they stopped caring about babies. Like it was like, do you need to burp him? Nah, he'll be fine. You want to change his diaper? He'll figure it out. It was like, okay, it's weird, but yeah. So in 2nd grade, my aunt gave me a book, and it was called Ventriloquism for Dummies. Like the whole play, Dummies for Dummies. Anyway, so I had started to learn to become a ventriloquist, throwing my voice, speaking with my mouth closed, all of that stuff. And that's one skill. But in order to perform, you have to tell jokes. So my first stand-up gig ever was 2nd grade, Emerson Heights Elementary School, doing a terrible ventriloquism job and telling some jokes. But moving through that aspect of my life, I went to college, first in my family to go to college, which was Penn State University. Okay. Yeah. And then I think college was a big shaping time for me, because at that time there was sports and I had all these goals and plans, and then there's injuries, and all of a sudden you're like, what do you do? Like it became a restructuring of what my life had to be. Mm-hmm. And we had someone come into the school to do stand-up, and he was trash, absolute horseshit. And so me being a young dickhead started to heckle him. And then I heckled him for most of his set, which now as a comic, I was an absolute dickhead, but I did. And everyone was like, Marv, you should really start telling jokes. And I was like, nah, not me. I don't tell jokes. Years later, I finally do my first stand-up bit, and here we go 10 years after that.
Wow. And you never thought you would. So in college, first of all, how did your family react to you being the first one to go to college, and your siblings? Like, were they supportive, or were they kind of jealous, or like, how did that?
No one cared.
No one cared.
Yeah, like I come from the family, and every family is different, right? But college wasn't a family thing. So my mom's goal was, you need to graduate high school, period. Mm-hmm. If you graduate high school, done my job.
Yeah. That's
and
how
then
my
what
family was too. That's how my family was too. Like, no one's really gone to college or anything in my family either. And my parents were like, as long as you graduate high school, we're good.
Yeah. So anything more was like, my siblings didn't really care. No one was like, look at you trying to, it was like, whatever.
Okay. And what made it important for you to go?
I had always knew I was meant to do more. Right? Like I always knew I was meant for more. I didn't know what the more was, but I knew, like, I didn't study in high school, or I studied very minimally. And I was a straight A student all throughout middle school. Got to high school, started to, be a teenager, and then finished straight A's. I think I got 1 D because the teacher didn't like me. And then I got A's the rest of the semester. So I always knew there was more, and everyone started telling me like, "You're supposed to go to college. There's your more." And it was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And then, so I just college became a conversation piece from outside the family, never inside the family. There was no, I didn't have any family members go, "Hey, you're the one," because no one cared. It was, "So you're going to a trade school after college?" Like, no, college is supposed to set me up to not have to go to trade school. I don't know. You can make some good money riding trucks.
Did you have any idea of what you wanted to do when you went into college, or?
No, I did what a lot of kids did and still do. I was good at something, and so that was the journey, right? So I was good at math and science, and so it was like, "You're going to be an engineer." Okay, I guess that's it. And as I went through high school, going into high school, I was like, "Oh, mom, I want to go to Baltimore School of the Arts, which is our acting theater school," because I kind of always had that like desire to perform and entertain. "No, you can't make money doing acting." Okay. So I went to Baltimore Polytechnic, which was an engineering high school. Um, did extremely well there, graduated, went into Penn State in the computer science and mathematics program. Like everything I was doing was because I was good at it. And then one day, one of my professors was like, "You'll be doing this for the rest of your life." And I was like, "Oh, nah, I'm not going to be able to do this." Computer engineering, computer engineers, the ones that I've known, are some of the worst people in the world. Like, they're just boring. They're boring people. Now, Morgan, imagine me sitting in the office where everyone's like this,
No,
being me. Like, it wouldn't even work.
you wouldn't work. No.
They're like, "We can't focus with Marvin telling jokes." I'm like, "Sorry, but this is the worst."
No. Well, and you're really active, and every day as a trainer is different, and acting and stand up and everything is you're around people all the time, different people every day. Chris and I got into this last week too. Like, we're just not designed to sit at a desk. Like, it's just it
No,
work for someone else. It just doesn't work.
my brain does not allow me to function. Like, as a writer, you even get to play in journeys as you're writing. So it's not the same monotonous life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, no, I don't even think I could sit still now for 8 hours
Mm-hmm.
uh, without losing my mind.
Yeah. So you're in college, and then doing like studying, you just realize that you can't do that forever.
Yeah, well, so the professor approached me to do something, and I was like, "Can I think about it?" And me thinking about it was offensive to him. Like, he was like, "What do you mean?" Because if you would have asked any of the other students in the program, they would have been like, "Absolutely." But the black student that knows what he's doing, it always looks good. And it was like, "Yeah, let's get that guy." And I was like, "Let me think about it." It was a very honest, like, "Do I feel like dealing with it?" And he was like, "You'll be doing this for the rest of your life." And I was like, "Yeah, no." So I applied and auditioned for the theater program, and I was accepted into the theater program, and it was like,
Yep.
so that's part of my going through the theater program, having a kid very young.
Yeah. How old were you when you had D?
Darion was When Darion was born, I was 21.
Okay.
Like, but I had turned 21 in June. He was born in October. And I can tell you now, I'm barely mature enough to have a kid. Right now, I was not mature enough to have a kid at 21.
Well, but you've always been an amazing dad. I mean,
I
I've
tried to
known
be.
you for, like you said, I think he was 8 when I met him. And he was always, because a lot of our coworkers bring their kids in. Um, into the break room and stuff. And I just have these memories of him being just so polite and sweet and well behaved. Like he was like the coolest kid, and you could have conversation with him. I mean, and I remember offering him candy one day, and he goes, "I'm gonna have to ask my dad first." My heart melts. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So you've done a very good job. I mean, I know you probably think like, God, I was really immature, 21, but he's amazing. So you did an amazing job.
Well, we'll see. He's 16 now, and boy, I tell you, it's not the same kid.
No. But teenagers are tough though. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I'm going to be polite.
okay, so you're 21, you have this kid,
Mm-hmm.
and then how does that affect your life?
It made me grow up, thankfully, because you know me, and everyone who does know me knows I could be a bit crazy still, a bit on the wild side. I like to have fun, right? And like that's just who I am. And having a kid was like, oh, I have to go to work. I have to get a job that is, sustainable. I had to do a series of things that I wouldn't have had to do at 21. At 21, I could have couch surfed for the next 5 years of my life or at friends and family, and no one would have been like, hey, get your life together.
Right.
But at 21, it was like, you have a kid, get your life together. And it was important to me because my dad wasn't uh, the greatest. And so it made, for me, it was, I'm going to not repeat what I experienced and what my
Your
siblings experienced.
parents weren't together when did they split?
My parents split. That's funny. My parents are Black, Morgan, and Black relationships are a little different than other people's relationships. Um, my parents got married 5 years ago
Oh, they got married 5 years ago.
for the first time. Not a redo, not a oh no, first time 5 years ago.
Wow, well, good for them though, right?
I don't know.
No? Oh,
No. The jury's still out on it.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, they
Like,
obviously love each other to have gone through like everything that they've, I mean, I don't know the whole story, but gone through in their life. You're like, look at it. And they still want to be together, and they finally get married after all this time.
I just think my dad got old, and being old, the playmate in him was like, "Oh man, I'm tired now," and it was like, "Hey, Carolyn, what you doing?"
Like, I want to be taken care of when I'm in diapers.
Yeah, I don't think this came, and mind you, I don't know because I've not had the conversation. It just doesn't seem like it came from like a sincere place of like, you've been around and you've raised my kids and you've been nothing but I don't think that was the conversation in his head. That might have been an external conversation, but inside I think he was just like, boy, I'm starting to get old.
So how's your relationship with him now?
It used to be rocky. It used to be really rocky. And now I have no problems with my dad. And that's because of therapy. But one of the things that I've learned and I've accepted is my dad operated the best way he could with the tools that he had. I don't think in one instance it was against any of us, right? I don't think he had any problems with any of my siblings. I just think with the tools he had, that was the best he could give. And you can't be mad at that.
Right. Oh, I get it 100%. I've been through a lot of therapy too. I had daddy issues, and I love my dad, and we're close now. but growing up, kind of same, like he wasn't the best dad, and he knows that, and
Right.
it really messed me up in relationships. And for a long time I just thought, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not whatever enough, and I would try so hard to get his attention, and really it just came down to like his stuff. I took it so personally, but it's not personal.
Right.
Like it's just that he had a really hard upbringing, and he didn't want to be his dad or his mom. Like his mom was really, abusive to him in a lot of ways, and
Mm-hmm.
so like he didn't want to be his parents, and so he just decided it was best to just not really be around at all.
Right.
Like not like he would only allow us to get so close to him. And I'm like, why doesn't my dad want to be around me? Why doesn't he want to spend time, And I took it so personal and would try so hard. But it's like, growing up and in therapy, you realize, and having conversation now as an adult, like it had nothing to do with me. It was all him. And I'm
Right.
sure your dad was the same. It had nothing to do with your siblings. It was just his stuff.
Right. And that it takes time to understand it, and then it takes time to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because once you understand it, then you still have your own feelings to process with it. But yeah, I have no issues with my dad. The last time I saw him was for my older brother's wedding, and it was all really good. So,
Good.
you know,
But you knew that you wanted to be a different dad for your son.
right.
Yeah.
I want to be a very different dad. And so that's what the goal has been. And now it's not be the opposite of my dad. It's just prepare this kid for what life is really about to be. Like there was a shift, and it's like, all right, now it's not just about being present. I've been present. I've been around. You know me.
Yeah.
You can call me. We talk about any and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's prepare you to be an actual man, and a black man in this society, which is fun.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, you're doing an amazing job. I know teenage years must be kind of brutal. And yeah, but I mean, I did see a lot of your posts, like, especially during, this last year, like with Black Lives Matter and everything, and just seeing like how you are with your son, and I just think it's beautiful. Like you are such a great dad and just such a great person, and yeah,
Tell me more.
I do. And no, I see that like you post so much about like I think I went on live with Chris, now that we're getting into this, like just during like everything with, I was honestly like one of those people, unfortunately, that were kind of like racism is still like a thing, because in my world, like in my bubble, I guess, like working
Mm-hmm.
at Equinox, and we have a lot of different people, a lot of different races, a lot of, and everyone was just cool with each other and like friends. And then I was like asking one of my clients who's, young, she's 16. And I'm like, do you ever experience anyone being racist to you? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, really? And I was just like, I gotta educate myself. And I went on and I got really emotional with Chris because we were talking about, I'm like, it just hit me that like George Floyd, that could have been you, Dawn, people that I love, like. And I just got like, I'm just gonna get emotional now, and I'm like, we have a huge problem,
Yeah.
huge problem, and I just feel like so dumb because I'm like, I just really didn't think it was that bad, like in my little world,
Well, I mean, there's no fault in that, right? Like there's no fault in not knowing because of your experiences, right? I think part of the issue that we really face in America is you don't have to know, because you're not a Black woman, you're not a Black guy. So no one's gonna grab their purse when Morgan walks by, unless they know Morgan just got out for being a kleptomaniac. Like that's not your experience, right? Which is absolutely okay. The problem is when someone shares their experience and then the response is, nah, but that's not because of that. And it's like, now the communication has changed, right? Like, I'm not going to fault you. Listen, I didn't know what white people were like growing up. I remember the first time I went in the room and I was the only Black person in the class. I was like, where did all these white people come from? Because they were not around. And like, it was the opposite. It'd be like one or two white kids and in my class, to switching to the other side. So I didn't know, what hikes were. I didn't know that you could eat macaroni and cheese as a sole dinner with like nothing else. Like, those were like things I was like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
So I would never knock an experience. The knock comes from when you get people who say George Floyd deserved what he got, or he was high and on drugs, or you get like the Breonna Taylor situation where it's like, well, she lived in a bad neighborhood. It's like, just because her neighborhood wasn't great doesn't mean that woman deserved to be shot and killed. And that's where the racism no longer lives, not no longer, but minimally. It doesn't live in the, hey, nigger. They don't that racism is not the racism anymore, right? The racism now is, hey, these schools aren't equal. And these schools aren't equal because this neighborhood's property tax supports this school, while this neighborhood property tax support this school. Now, generational wealth has already shown us that there's a huge gap earning between Black and white families. Then you go about how much wealth was accumulated over that time. Now you have a school that is operating on $350,000 a year, an entire school, versus a school that's operating on $3 million a year. And these are public schools. These aren't your private schools. So how can you then say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, or our education is the same, when you have kids that are learning $3 a head for the year versus $10,000 a head for the year? That's where the racism is, because you go, this is not fair. Yes, it is. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want my property taxes to do this. Because it's the norm. People want things to remain normal. But in that normalcy, racism thrives.
Yeah, and I watched, a couple documentaries like where I realized like the system, I guess, is like totally rigged to make people fail. Like to like really like have, people have a harder time being successful, like you're saying, with education, with jobs, with everything, pay, and it's it's got to change. And I like I said, I had no idea, like,
right,
no idea.
And that's the point, is we need to have the conversation, but people still don't want to have the conversation. That's the problem, right? Like, and then when someone does something to enjoy their privilege, right, or to knock someone else for not being a certain way, then they don't think it's racism. They just think it's situational, right? So it's like, oh, well, no, this situation is this, and I'm this, and I'm not that, and I would never say that. And so you can't have the conversation because they're so against the idea that some of their practices may be steeped in racism, because they believe racism and prejudice are one and the same, and it's not. That's the problem. Prejudices are one thing, The systemic racism that powers America is a whole nother thing. 12% of your population cannot be 75% of your prison system. It does not add up.
So how do we, like, I mean, I just like look at the media today, obviously, and there's like, I mean, and recently too, you see a lot of like cancel culture and stuff, and like people,
Sick of that shit.
and there's a lot going on with that. But what do you feel like is going to really make a difference and change? Like obviously having conversation and making people more aware of what's going on, but like where do we like where does it go for, like, how do we make a difference and have change?
This is what I try to, I believe, I have my own belief, right? And there are people whose beliefs will be different than mine, and so on and so forth. But I believe it starts and ends with the education system first, right? And this is why. If you get a decent education, your earning power becomes higher. Your earning power becomes higher, you can sustain a home. You can sustain a home, you can have a family. You can pass on that knowledge, that drive, that new standard, right? Like, you're going to get a college degree, right? Now, what becomes standard is in that household, in that family, in that next generation is like, oh no, you're getting your college degree. Then the next generation is like, oh, we get masters in this house. Oh, well, your dad's a doctor, your mom's a doctor, your aunt's a doctor, your cousin's a doctor, and you're like, well, I gotta be a doctor, right? Now that takes generations to change, but it's got to start with the first set of education. And now, how do you get education to be equal? You don't have neighborhoods that get their property tax only. You pool the property tax. You equalize the property tax. You disperse amongst the schools equally. Period. Right? Because that gives every school an equal footing to start. Now, if this school in this nice neighborhood can fundraise a couple $1 million, which they can, then that's fine. But this school is not operating in the red anymore. It's operating level. Now, everyone falls in the bell curve, right? Like if we take any question about anything in the world, we all fall in the bell curve, right? You got normal motherfuckers, you got a couple of elite people, and then you just got dickheads. And you leave the dickheads where they are, right? Dickheads are going to come no matter what, social, economic, whatever. But if you put everyone equal, all of a sudden, the bell curve, those that are elite can be elite. Those that are in that front end can stay in that front end. Those in the middle are in the middle, but the middle is no longer back here. The middle's up here. Now you get that next set of generations to move, and that bell curve shifts just a little, but now that elite is moving forward again. That's how you do it. This is not everyone wants a quick fix. Everyone wants to do fan service, racism removal, right? Where it's like, take Uncle Ben's off the box. Yay! I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Aunt Jemima, so now I gotta eat Pearl Mills? I'd rather have Aunt Jemima. Like, I don't care. That doesn't, I've never grown up and been like, man, the best thing I can do is be on a pancake box. That's not my problem. My problem is going to school and my textbooks falling apart, not having a spine, or having textbooks that are copyright 1993 when the school up the street has this year's textbooks.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I had this thought the other day when I heard they were trying to change the names of schools and stuff, like even like Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't do anything for today. Like, history happened. You can't pretend it didn't. You can just grow from it. So in my opinion, I'm like, okay, so where does this stop? Like, changing names of things, taking certain things off of products. Like, okay, so we're gonna pretend like nothing happened and just sweep it under the rug. We can change all the names we want. That's not gonna change what happened,
Yeah.
and it's like that. It's pointless to me. It's like okay, that happened, and okay, we grow from it, and we do what you're talking about to make a real difference. But
Yes.
changing the names and canceling certain things, like,
It's fan service. It's fan
okay,
service.
yeah, it's okay. Like, what does that do though in the end? Like the
Right.
big
Like
picture.
they cut Pepe Le Pew out of the movie
Yes.
because he was being Pepe Le Pew. And
Yeah.
it's like the reason why they did it wasn't for really trying to go, let's make sure women's rights and women are respected. It was, here's a fan service thing, but are you going to do something to push towards equality in the workplace towards women? No? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need fan service. Now, when we talk about Confederate flags and soldiers and names, fuck those guys. They were actual treasonous who went to war against the United States of America. They should have never got a trophy. They should have never got any. You don't go to Germany and they be like, listen, we got the statue of Hitler, but hear me out. Because Hitler united, like they don't do that, right? They're just like, we don't really fuck with Hitler because he was kind of fucked up. We should treat our Southern insurrectionists the same way. Right? That I'm fine with. But that's not fan service. That is letting history be true to history. No losing military anywhere has statues. Not one. No country in the world has been like, hey, they lost the war. But man, did you see those blue suits they had? Boy.
Yeah. No, it's you're right.
You've
It's
never been to Britain, they'd be like, hey, we got these red coats. Remember? It's not a fucking thing. So I don't understand why we are just like, hey,
I don't.
respect our heritage. It's not heritage. You lost.
Yeah. You're 100% right. I do want to go back to you talking about like college and everything. Is that somebody, or is that something that you're encouraging your son to do? Does he know like he's got to go to college after you're making it a?
There's a bear shit in the woods. Absolutely. One of our biggest recent problems has been him focusing on his education.
Well,
He
with
wants to do,
Zoom, I see you still doing Zoom.
yeah, and I know it's hard, but it's not, right? Like we're dealing with very simple things. Do what they ask you to do. Don't pick and choose what you decide is important and is not, because what you decide is not important still gets a 0. Right? And guess what? You're not doing anything. You're home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just do it. And like, so we've done a lot of fighting because he wants to be a basketball star, and he's a pretty good basketball player right now. And he's just like, I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, you can't even play ball if your grades aren't what they're supposed to be.
He's got to go to college. Yeah.
Right. You want to play for the Maryland Terrapins. You need better grades than this. So we're having hiccups in that. But like I said, generationally, what he gets to see now is his dad and his mom both went to Penn State. So he understands that that's not really a question, as opposed to, like I said, my mom was just like, whoo, out of high school. So he understands that. And the expectation will be he pulls it together. And then when he has kids, and I'm a grandpa at some point, a very young, attractive, hot grandpa, that kid will understand, like, oh, well, everybody's in college. My grandpa's in this Greek organization, and then this is this. And again, establishing generationally the changing of the guard.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how is your relationship with his mom now? Because I know you guys aren't together. for those of you that don't know. how is that now, like co-parenting? Because I know there's a lot of listeners that are co-parenting, and it's not the easiest thing. So how is it with you guys?
We are not co-parenting well.
Okay.
And we are not co-parenting well because we don't communicate well. So for people who are looking for guidance and co-parenting, I would say let the past go. I think a lot of people get stuck in who people were and mistakes people made, and instead of dealing with what people are now. The other things are ego. Check your ego. Nothing that's happening with that kid is about you. Nothing. All right. So even if you don't want to talk to me about the kid.
Right.
Right?
Number one.
I don't care if you talk to me. I don't care what you do with your life. When it comes to dealing with this one that we have had together, let's put our energy into that. And sometimes me and his mom don't do that well.
That's gotta be tough. It's gotta be tough. I know. I have a friend kind of going through that right now and dealing with his ex and the way that his kids are feeling, and he's trying to communicate with the ex about this is what the kids are saying, and she's like in a space where she's just wanting to be selfish and do things for herself and not really putting the kids first, and then that irritates him, and then the kids are upset. And I see it and I'm like, man, that's got to be hard, because you can't force the other parent to parent the way that you would want to parent, and you see your kids getting hurt and you're like, I mean, I just see a lot of friends and clients that are going through it, and it's tough. It looks tough.
It's tough because what you, again, like I said, what you want at the end of the day is you want to do what's best for the kid. And sometimes that's only one parent's sentiment. The other parent has a different focus at the time. And I'm not to say, and I don't want people to think that I'm like, oh, here's me pointing a finger. I'm just saying, if your focus is not there, then it does a disservice to the other parent and the children. Right? Because there's a missing piece of communication, the kids aren't getting the same message. And that becomes really hard to have a kid focus on one message when they're receiving two messages.
That's tough.
So it's just, it's something that we try to improve upon. Sometimes it gets a little better, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets a little better, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know.
You're doing a great job. I want to reassure you that your kid is amazing. Even if
please do.
Even if you want to beat them sometimes, I'm sure. Teenagers are tough. They're tough, but you're doing a good job. So so I did want to talk about, you're obviously a trainer. That's how we met. You still train at Equinox. And how did you get into, because I know like you're an entertainer by nature, that's your passion. You do acting, writing, stand-up. You have a podcast that I will let you plug later, and you do a lot of stand-up, and you're doing a virtual show with Chris on Fridays, and so you've got a lot going on there. Where did training, because you guys, you got to check out his Instagram. Your body has always been amazing.
Tell me more.
0% body fat. And so how, I know you played like, sports and stuff, so how did fitness and training come into play? Is that also a passion that you have, or is that just like something that you chose because it allows you to be flexible to do the other things you want to do, or?
When I got into fitness, I had no idea my schedule would be flexible. Um, I had had an injury, my left knee, and I tore my, what was it, my medial meniscus, my MCL, and took damage to my LCL.
How'd you do that?
I got rolled on. That's it. Off of a pile up, a roll on. Fun. So I had become really interested in what was happening during my rehab. And I was like, oh, so this is this and that is that. So I looked up because they say this, that, and the third. Like, I don't know what that means. So then I looked up, oh, it means this. Oh, this is what a grade 2 tear is versus a grade 3 versus a grade 1. And, all of those things started becoming really interesting. And then as I was rehabbing, understanding like why we're doing this many reps with this leg versus that leg, and understanding, and I was like, oh, this is kind of dope. And so it piqued my interest. And then I was like, yo, so if I was training right the first time, the chance of me getting injured would have probably been less. But I'm sure the workouts are so much better now, but the old workout was like, here's some squats, do some bench press, get strong, get out there and be great. As opposed to like balance and front and back and sagittal plane and frontal plane and transverse and all these things that just never happened became words that kind of stuck. So I was like, ooh, I want to do this.
No, I hear you. That's so funny because I was the same way. I'd never been interested really in much before. Like I did photography for a long time and I was interested in that, and I just like being creative, but there's something about learning about the body and how it actually works, because I got really into working out after a breakup, and it was just like my way of dealing with it. And so it was like I was working out for the first time, and I thought, well, why do I do this? Why do I do a chest press? Like, what does that do? Why do I do squats? What is that working? And I remember just wanting to learn, like, well, how do you get this look or that look? And so I just like went back to school and got certified because I wanted to learn for myself. I didn't know it was going to be a career when I went into it. I wanted to learn. And when you learn about, working the like most exercises that everyone does is in a sagittal plane, and so learning and those words like stuck with me, like a transverse plane versus
right.
and I got the same thing, like totally geeked out on all of that and like obsessed about how the body works and why we do what we do. And I'm like, I want to always be able to explain everything that I do, why I do it, what it does, and yeah, it became like a passion. Yeah.
And so that to me was what it was. So it wasn't like, oh, here's a job that will allow my schedule. It just worked out that way. Then I was like, oh, wait, I can move how I want to. Dope. But that's, when life kind of guides you a little bit, that's what this is. And so I'm blessed that while I'm pursuing my creative side, I enjoy my job.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, that is very blessed, because a lot of people, actors, have to work at a restaurant or a bar and it's not their passion. They don't like doing it, but it brings in the money so that they
pay your
can
bills.
pay bills while they're. But yeah, I feel like we are very blessed to have found something that we love to do. It doesn't feel like work at all.
At all.
Meet really cool people that become family, and then on top of it, you get to be flexible to do other things that you want to do. It's so that's so. What do you see for your future? Because I know that you do it all. You write. You're hilarious. You do stand up. You're an actor, and I always said I see you doing like a sitcom. Like I see you. Yeah, like being the star of a sitcom. And so what do you see for your future, like your ideal, like where you want to be?
So the dream job has always been Martin, the TV show, Martin, where Martin was an executive producer, he was a writer, and he was a star. That's always been the goal. Um, and I keep that as my driving, motivating goal. I got one of the dopest gifts for Christmas from my homegirl, Natasha, which is legitimately Jerome from Martin on the wall looking out to the Himalayas. And that's like, it's on my wall framed because that's the goal. So the goal is, I used to sing Marvin instead of Martin.
Yeah.
Like, so it was that's the goal. So I have a couple scripts now that one's really fucking good that we're looking to pitch, and that'll be it. That's always been the dream job. 5-6 years, you never know how long your show go, but to be able to do that, to create and just have fun, because that's the thing. Like, one of the things I've done is I've been able to work a few projects, and some of those projects you work with people that you don't really know, and it's cool, but there's something very different than being in a room full of your boys making money and having fun. Like the writer's room for the project I did for Kevin Hart's LOL Network, we laughed the entire time. It sounded like nothing was getting done, but we delivered 8 episodes. Amazing. With on time, no problem, and was loved, right? But it was so, like, it never felt like work. One moment.
That's the goal.
12, 13, 14, 15-hour days should feel like work. It didn't. So that's the goal. The biggest picture goal is to start my own production company, to where we're doing films and TV shows, and I guess now I'm really dealing with social media platforms and really getting that going, because I want to, the biggest goal is I want to start opening up rec centers in inner city communities. Because, like I said, I believe education is the source. So if you can open these rec centers and pay people a livable wage to be able to tutor these kids to play basketball and sports and get them off the street and have a place for them to go, and to have people who actually live in that community work there because they can afford to pay whatever bills they accumulate, all of a sudden what happens is that little kid whose parents might not be on top of it, his neighbor is. Yeah. Right? And now his neighbor's like, hey, what are you doing? Now, shouldn't you be at the rec center? Shouldn't you do this? And that kid's like, oh, you're right. And that's because the person that they check into is the same person that they see. But in order to have rec centers like that, you need government funding and privatized funding. So the privatized funding would come from my production company, and the government funding, and we would make it work. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the goal.
That's amazing. Well, I'm excited. I know you're gonna do it because you're very driven.
Yeah, I'm these
talented. So yeah, I look forward to it, and I just love you. I think you have the biggest heart, and I'm just lucky to know you. And Equinox just opened back up, and I will be there.
Okay. Well, I will see you there.
Tomorrow, or yeah, I'm gonna go, and we'll see each other. I'm excited. I feel like things are finally like getting back to some sort of normalcy slowly.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping we aren't doing. People out here are fucking crazy. I say, like, everyone's back out in the streets like COVID stopped. COVID didn't stop.
I know, it didn't stop. I mean, I still, wear my mask everywhere, even when I like walk the dog and stuff. And yeah, I had a friend go to Equinox today, a member, and I'm like, send me pictures. Like, I want to see how it looks. And there was like no one in there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there was one other person, and he was showing me like all the cardio, and he's sitting there by himself. And I'm like, okay, I'll go.
It's
Like,
10% capacity, so
yeah.
there's space and there's, you know, it's
Mhm.
fine. I think the worst place is the bench press because every guy only bench presses. So outside of that, the rest of it's been cool.
And it was probably a Monday.
It was a Monday. It was a Monday at 6, and I was like,
Yeah.
Universal Chest Day.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I just like I see people eating inside and stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm good.
Not yet.
Baby steps, but I am excited because I am gonna start training a couple more people in person. I've still been training people like more over Zoom and
Mm-hmm.
FaceTime, so it will be nice to see some people in person. And like, of course, I like still wearing a mask, training them outside, but just the fact that we're in person
Yeah,
now and like getting a little closer to some sort of normal, I'm like, ugh, thank God, because I really thought this was gonna last 2 weeks, and here we are a year later. I'm
we
like,
all thought. We were like, oh, 2 weeks downtime? Low
yeah.
key became an alcoholic for 2 weeks because why not?
I was like, I could finally binge watch something on Netflix that I like. Everyone talks about this show or that show. I'm like, I finally have time, and I totally took advantage. I got onto TikTok. I was like, this is
I
a
saw
fun
you.
2 weeks, and then I'm gonna last a little longer than that. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll get a dog and like get comfortable.
Yeah, get comfortable. That is the right word.
Well, I'm glad I got to talk. I miss you so much. I'm gonna see you in the next couple days, and I'm gonna give you a hug. So you better be prepared.
As long as you have your mask on.
All right. Well, I'll see you soon. I love you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
for coming on.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
talk
about to plug
about
myself.
your stuff. Talk about yourself because you have. Yeah, tell everybody what you have.
Plug myself. No, so every 2 weeks, Chris, who you've seen or listened to in the last podcast, and I do a show every 2 weeks. It's called Friday Funnies, and it's a dope Zoom stand-up show. It sounds weird that it's a Zoom stand-up show and I'm sitting comfortably in my chair, but it is a dope show. We have a real chill vibe. Everyone who's come to is like, man, I like the vibe of this show. So that's every other week. You can find it. I post it every other week on my Instagram, which is at Marvin Telp, TELP. I'm doing a podcast. It's called The Coolest Nerd You've Ever Met. So if you like anime, Marvel Universe, really, really nerdy stuff, which most people don't like, but if you do, or if you're looking to get into it, Coolest Nerd You've Ever Met podcast. We're actually growing. It's getting really fun. Um, Everything else I post, I put out. Come find me. Oh, there's a new series on Black Oak TV, which is a new app, and I'm doing it with the guys from Dormtainment, and it's called Unknown Stories from Unknown People, and it is just as foolish as it sounds, but it is so much fun to watch. So if you can, check it out. I'm done plugging myself.
Awesome.
Thanks, Morgan.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and I appreciate it. And I'm gonna check out because you do that podcast. I mean, I don't know. I like the Marvel movies. I don't know much about anime, but you do it with another coworker of ours that we had, Raf. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
Raphael.
gonna check that out because that is the one thing I haven't checked out of you guys' yet. But I love your Zoom comedy shows, and I was the same, like, how is this gonna work, because I worked in comedy for a long time doing photography for all the, and so I learned a lot. And I'm like, the room is everything. Like, if you have a weird room, like, stand up doesn't work. And it works. Like, you guys are hilarious, and it's somehow like, I was telling Chris this, like, you play off each other And with Zoom, it like goes back and forth with whoever's talking. And so I set it to that screen, and I'm like, somehow this works, and it's hilarious. And it was a lot of fun.
You go ahead and advertise, Morgan. Give me this clip so I can post this clip on my page.
Okay. All right. Well, I love you, and I will see you in the next couple of days.
All right. Mwah, mwah. Thanks, baby.
Bye.
Bye.